Hello explorers, thanks for joining us again and welcome back to another exciting and informative video on our YouTube channel. If you are joining us for the first time, we want to thank you for watching. In this episode, I will be diving into the reason why the continent of Africa has put the United States of America under enormous pressure. I will be looking at specifics in this video, jump into geopolitics and more analysis. More importantly, why the European Union and other European countries are more focused on internal politics and also the war in Ukraine. Also, why the United States of America is losing grounds in the continent of Africa to Russia and more economically driven China. I will dive into some other very important perspective in this episode, so I will encourage you to watch this video to the end for clarity and better understanding. So without any much delay, let's just dive straight into it. Kenya's President William Ruto is the first African leader in more than 15 years to make an official state visit to the United States of America. This is an opportunity for the President Joe Biden to demonstrate commitment to Africa at this time when Washington appears to be playing catch-up in an engagement with the continent of Africa. But relations with other African allies are under strain as strategic rivals, including Russia and also China, challenge traditional areas of Western influence. At one time, Mr. Ruto would have been an unlikely candidate to be feted at the White House with the pomp and ceremony granted to only a handful of close allies a year ago. If you look at perspective, the International Criminal Court charged him with crimes against humanity related to the violence that followed Kenya's 2007 elections. But the case collapsed and Mr. Ruto has since reinvented himself as an indispensable partner to the United States of America. Lingering suspicions about his democratic credentials are not the reason that Congress decided against inviting him to address a joint session. Under Mr. Ruto, Kenya has developed its role as the region's diplomatic and business center, an anchor that the United States of America's tough neighborhood that is struggling to find itself in different areas. Although domestically, he has faced protests over his handling of struggling economy. Globally, he has become an advocate for Africa on issues related to climate change and debt relief. If you look at other areas, Kenya is also a very important country in the continent of Africa, specifically in East Africa. Kenya is also an important and security partner in East Africa and has pleased Washington by also pledging to send Kenyan police to Haiti. The only phone call President Biden made to a leader in sub-Saharan Africa last year was to Mr. Ruto about Nairobi's promise to lead a multinational force to the troubled country. If you look at the continent of Africa as it continues to shift away from Western influence, analysts suspect that the state visit is partly meant to compensate for the fact that Mr. Biden has failed to keep his own promise to visit the continent of Africa. He made the pledge on a grand summit of African leaders in Washington 2 years ago, in which he assured his guests he was all informed for the continent of Africa. But since then, he has been distracted by crises elsewhere, such as the wars in Ukraine and that of Gaza. If you look at other perspective, the summit followed the administration's announcement of a new strategy aimed at turning into relationship with African countries into more equal partnership that advances strategic interest of both. In some aspect, the Mr. Ruto is a poster child of that approach by the United States of America, but as he arrives Washington, considering its importance and also interaction, the focus has been on US setbacks in West Africa. If there is one country that best also captures the challenges facing the United States of America in Africa, perhaps that country is Niger. For many years, it was home to more than 1,000 US troops stationed on 2 bases for where they launched security operations against Islamist militants in the region. But a coup last year changed the nature of the relationship with Niger's military rulers, growing closer to Russia and also Iran. America's efforts to find a way to continue security cooperation broke down in March. Most recently, the Nigerian Prime Minister told the Washington Post a senior US delegation has taken a condescending tone and showed a lack of respect. He accused it of trying to dictate Niamey's relationship with other countries. This week alone, the Pentagon confirmed a full withdrawal of its troops by September, opening the doors to even closer ties between Niger and also Moscow. Molly Field, the State Department's top African affairs official, says it was impossible to square America's interests and values, which also included a timeline to return to civilian rule with the junta in Niger. According to Molly Field, we shared the legitimate concern about the trajectory of Niger's discussion with Russia and also Iran. In the end, we were not able to reach an understanding that addressed our top priorities. She said nothing that the relationship should be reciprocal. If you look at other areas, she went ahead to say, we intend to maintain a diplomatic partnership as well as other aspects of our relationship. If you look at other areas, the breakdown followed Niger's expulsion of the French troops and also its old colonial power. It highlights the tension as the United States of America tried to balance security partnership with democratic values, limitation, and also Russians do not share in other areas. If you look at other aspects with regards to geopolitics in play, what has happened in Niger has been echoed in other Sahel countries, with Moscow happy to offer protection to those who seize power in a string of coups, often in exchange for access to natural resources. However, a number of Western countries have also exploited Africa in greater details and also sponsor coups in the region. Now, saying that Moscow is playing the game that has been played by Western nations, I think that is something else in another video. By saying that Moscow is just there with regards to the aspect of also sponsoring those particular regimes, it means that the West does not understand why the African people and continent and presidents served are able to make their own strategic decision at this particular point in their history. In recent weeks, a small contingent of American troops were forced to leave Niger's neighbor Chad, and where officials there questioned the future of the US presence. If you look at further perspective, America is also facing increasing competition from other nations on the continent. China has been investing in Africa for 2 decades, but there is a host of new middle players as well in the continent of Africa. According to my research with regards to the Gallup poll recently, that found that the United States of America had lost its soft power edge while China had gained fans. But the biggest change was Russia's rise in popularity. Historically, the West has seen Africa as a problem to be solved. Actors like China and Turkey and other Arab Gulf players, they see it as an opportunity to be seized. According to Mutinga, so the way is with China. Turkey and the Gulf have engaged has been welcomed because it's seen as a long-term bet. It seems as taking the continent seriously with regards to their own perspective. The Biden administration points to some success in its effort to treat Africa as a strategic partner. A stream of high-level visits has framed the importance of Africa as the continent of the future, with its young, fast-growing population, abundance of natural resources, and increasing influence on the international stage. The American backings has also helped African nations win better representation at global forums such as the G20, the International Monetary Fund, the IMF, and also the World Bank. Although the United States of America has struggled to get African support for its potential and position on the Israel war in Gaza and Russia's war with Ukraine. If you look at other strategic areas, the administration has also won plenty for investing in the Lobito Corridor, a rail line that's snacking through Angola and Democratic Republic of the Congo and Zambia that will be used to transport critical raw materials. With that Lobito Corridor, the Americans decided to speak in the language that Africans understand. According to Kingsley Magalu, a Nigerian political economist and also former central bank governor. If you look at other aspects as well, if you are seen to be delivering major projects that are beneficial to the African economies and to the African people, then off the backs of you have a leverage to talk about democracy and things like that based on that aspect. If you look at other experts who point out, like Alex Vines, head of the African program of the Chatham House, think tank in London pushes back on the perception that Western powers are fading in Africa. According to his own perspective, one African leader once said to him, "We get tired of a Chinese buffet. We would like to go a la carte. We want choice," he says. So I don't think that what we are increasingly seeing is that the plenty of African countries want a bit of the United States, but they will want a bit of Russia or the United Arab Emirates or Turkey. The challenges is patchy African leadership with ambitious long-term vision that can make the most of the competition. As geopolitics takes its turn, President William Ruto is seen as one of the figures who can, but all, including Niger, have options. There is a game of chess going on. According to Vines, there is a new scramble for Africa. The difference is that the chess board, the African continent, is alive. It's not passive. It can suck people in and also rally surprising in different areas. If you look at the continent of Africa as a continent to choose strategic partners in modern days, that is the reason why this does not sit pretty well with Africa's own geopolitical partners. The continent of Africa is making some choices. The continent of Africa is also under enormous pressure to make strategic decisions as the population of the continent of Africa continues to grow. The leaders are beginning to feel the pressure as well. That is the reason why they have to make the strategic decisions that lead to the win-win situation. However, Western pundits will let you believe that most of the decisions that are currently happening in West Africa, specifically in French-speaking countries in the continent of Africa, has been influenced by Russia. However, that narrative that the African continent cannot make its own decision for its own people does not sit well in the continent of Africa. For those of you who feel that the continent of Africa will lie low in the current geopolitical climate, you may be mistaken. The continent of Africa is poised to make interesting and strategic choices that will anger whosoever is focused in the continent of Africa. That particular continent is not for the chicken-hearted. We want to thank you for watching. Let us know what you think in regards to the current visit to the United States of America by Kenyan president and why the United States of America can use this as a strategic option. However, Kenya is not a single country in the continent. There are other nations in the continent that still have issues to be settled with the United States of America. We want to thank you for watching. We are looking forward to meeting you soon in our next episode. If you are new here, check some of our informative and educating content on African geopolitical scene and also give us a like. We will see you in the comment section. Have a pleasant day. Bye bye.